The Museum of the Albemarle's History for Lunch for our second History for Lunch the month of March. Before we get started with our guest speaker today, I would like to, before we get started with our guest speaker today, I would like to let you all know that we will have another History for Lunch on Tuesday, April the 6th at 12 p.m. It will be virtually and in person. And we're going to have Miss Lucy Daniels. She's the co-author and a registered nurse. And she will be talking about her book, In Pursuit of Dorothy, the Lost Colony Ship. So she will be our guest speaker on April the 6th at 12 p.m. But today we would like to welcome our guest speaker. We have Kathy Rawls, Director of the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries and a native of Bertie County. Kathy is going to share her achievements in being with the division for more than 25 years, and as the first woman to hit the agency since the Fisheries Commission Board became the Division of Commercial Fisheries in the late 1920s. And she's also going to share with us how her family influenced her in joining the North Carolina fisheries and how they shared their love of the outdoors and helped guide her into the position she has today. So we are delighted to welcome Kathy with us. So Kathy, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Hello, everyone, and thank you to the Museum of the Albemarle staff for having me here today as part of their Women Breaking Barriers in Northeastern North Carolina. And my presentation today will focus on women breaking barriers in fishery science in North Carolina. And I'm sure that some of my staff are on Zoom today, and many of them are males and not females, but today we will be focusing on the females. So fellas, you just have to suck it up for a little while, about 45 minutes. It's great to see so many people here that I know. I've lived in Elizabeth City and worked in Elizabeth City for probably close to 16 years. And I made a lot of friends here. And it's great to see these folks again and be in Elizabeth City. My best friend actually works here at the Museum of the Albemarle, and she has been working here for nearly 30 years, and she ditched me today to go play golf. So as I say to her quite frequently, it's hard to find good help, but I'll carry on. So I might need some help with this, getting the slide. Let's see. I'm having some trouble getting this. Oh, I think I found my mouse there. Yeah, I got it. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm a little slow when it comes to electronics. Today, I hope to at least bring you some really great photos of our work and my life in fishing and my work at the Division of Marine Fisheries. I want to talk about me and how in the world I got to be the director of the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries. It surprises me as well sometimes. I want to talk about the history of the Division of Marine Fisheries, and I'll tell you that the history of the division is littered with barrier-breaking women that came long before me, and I will be paying tribute to those women throughout this presentation. And then I'll wrap the presentation up talking about the Division of Marine Fisheries today and what we actually do at the division, what our job is. So as an introduction, as Lori said, my name is Kathy Rawls. I am the director at the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries. I have been the director for almost a year now, and I am the first female director of the division. I remember when they offered me the job, that my direct supervisor said, you know, Kat, they're going to have to make a big deal in the paper and in the newsletter and the announcement about you being the first female director. And I know that's going to make you mad, but I want you to just play along and not cut up too bad about it. So I said, yes, sir, I'll do that. And I don't really like to dwell on being the first female anything, but the significance is certainly not lost on me. And it is an honor to continue on where those women pioneers in fishery science left off. So this is really where it all began for me. My parents are both in their 80s. I won't tell you how far into their 80s. They are here today. I love y'all, appreciate y'all coming. They love to fish. They always have, and they do to this day. And their love of the ocean is where they are where it began for me, and their love of the ocean. I remember my grandparents had a cottage in Kill Double Hills, and we spent many summers there. And that is where my love for the ocean and its creatures began. I remember crabbing with my grandfather and walking the beach with my grandmother and looking through the beach seiners catch that was scattered on the beach. And we sifted through the fish and the shellfish and all the really neat things that were there. And it was so fascinating. And I remember that my mom would pick up the jellyfish, even the stinging ones, and she would pick up the egg casings and the shells and all of those things. And she would teach us what they were and where they came from. And she was a great educator herself. And she did that for all of us, all of our siblings, and even the tourists. I remember at times there would be tourists standing around her as she was holding the stinging jellyfish, and she would tell them how to do it right, so it wouldn't sting you. It's just really fascinating. And when I was a kid, we would spend the night under the Organella Bridge fishing for trout. And my dad and I loved the fishing and catching part, although I'm not sure that we're really great at the catching part. We would bring the catches home, and Mom and I would help clean them, and we would cut the stomachs open to see what was in the stomachs. And that was the part that was just really fascinating for me. And it's really where it all began. We also spent vacations fishing in Hatteras since I was a young girl. And my parents participated in an annual trout tournament down there, and they would always provide the pig for the pig picking that happened to celebrate the trout tournament. It was so much great fun. And when we had a fishing vacation planned, my dad farmed, so it was a lot to plan a vacation. We had a fishing vacation planned. We were going on vacation and we were going fishing. And I remember one week we rode out 2 hurricanes at the Atlantic View Hotel in Hatteras Village. And the only reason we knew that there were hurricanes, we didn't have the Weather Channel back then, so we didn't have the internet. So the only reason we knew there were hurricanes is because some little fellow over at the weather station was running up the hurricane flag up and down the pole the whole week that we were there. So we could see it from our hotel room. So that's how we knew, but we were going fishing. My parents built a cottage in Hatteras Village in 1986, and we began spending our summers there as a family, fishing in Pamlico Sound, catching trout, drum, bluefish. We would head into the ocean and catch cobia. One of my favorite things to catch, and Spanish mackerel. And occasionally we would slip offshore and catch dolphin or try to. Fishing is life for my family. My entire family loves it. It always has been, and I hope that it always will be an important part of our lives as long as we're fit and able. You're never too young to start fishing, and I certainly wasn't. But you never really know as a kid what your parents drag you into, if that's going to be something that continues on with you as an adult. You just don't really know. But for me, it really was. It continued on through my life as an adult, and it will continue, hopefully, even past this. Fishing is still life for me. In between stints at the Division of Marine Fisheries, I ran an inshore charter business for several years out of Thicket Lump in Wanchese. And my business partner was also a female. And back in the mid-90s, it was strange to see charter boats operated and owned by women. But I didn't think it was unusual at all. And I just didn't think anything else about it. I can do this just as good as the next guy. And my daddy always said so. I have had my captain's license for, I don't even know, 15 years now, maybe more. And I spend a lot of time on the water, fishing and inshore and offshore, and just really just enjoying being on the water and really fishing for anything that would bite. And I certainly love going out into the Gulf Stream if I can get a ride. We pretty much resorted to what the old timers used to call the mosquito fleet, and we have small boats, but I certainly enjoyed a big open water fishing as well. Love marlin fishing in particular. My siblings and our kids have grown up fishing with us. It is a family affair. When my nephews are involved, it is a very competitive affair. They count every single fish. They brag about who catches the most, and they argue over whether it was a catch if you lost the fish at the boat. They even carry along these counters to make sure that they count the fish accurately. They have to keep scoring. It has to be a competition, but they love to fish. They have their whole lives. I do remember my youngest nephew, Parker, when he was little, he would always say, "We never catch anything." So that's basically our family motto now. We joke amongst ourselves that we never really catch anything, but you know what? We don't really care. We just love being on the water, and that's what we enjoy doing. Just a few more pictures of my family and our trips on the water. I have to tell you about this picture in the bottom right-hand corner here. We were heading out to the ocean, which happens to us many times. The boat broke down. I was wanting to go look for a cobia. It was in the summer. And as we were working on the boat, we were still in Pamlico Sound, not out in the ocean yet. And as we were working on the boat, my dad's working on the boat, I'm watching, and about a 50, 60 pound cobia, we were anchored, a 50, 60 pound cobia just swam right by us. I almost had a fit. I couldn't even believe it. This never happens to me. And here I am anchored up, don't even have a fishing rod in my hand. But I will never, ever forget that day or that particular moment. So as Kenneth Graham says in The Wind in the Willows, believe me, my young friend, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats. And I absolutely could not agree with him more. So other than my love for fishing, which I am hoping came through with those slides that I shared from my family, fishing with my family, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about how did I get to the Division of Marine Fisheries? What was my more immediate journey like? So I graduated from Lawrence Academy in Mary Hill in 1985. My focus during high school was sports. I was very athletic. I was, I guess, fairly successful for Lawrence Academy in basketball and softball. I loved both of the sports. I had college softball and basketball offers to other universities, not UNCW, but I was set on going to UNCW so that I could get a marine biology degree. I wanted to be a marine biologist, and that's all that would do. I attended UNCW from 1985 and through 1989. I graduated in 1989 with a Bachelor of Science in Marine Biology. And you know, at least I knew what I wanted to do when I went to school, but when you get out of school, then you really don't, what does that really mean? Well, for me at the time, I wanted to do whatever Jacques Cousteau was doing because I was mesmerized by him. I saw his documentaries, his programs on TV. It was just so fascinating. I wanted to swim with the dolphins and explore the ocean floor and submarines. At this point, that was what I had to go on. So that's kind of what I thought I might be doing. And when I signed on at UNCW, one of my professors was Dr. Ann McCrary. And I know for some folks that have gone to school at UNCW knew her or were lucky enough to have been there when she was. And as you will hear me do throughout this presentation, I want to recognize and honor the women that shaped my career. And whether they knew it or not at the time, other than my mother, Dr. Ann McCrary was one of those women. I remember her story of her love for marine life came about very similar to mine. Her father was a seafood dealer, and he took her into the Sound as a young girl and taught her so many things and showed her so many creatures and instilled a love for marine life that she carried throughout her life and her career. She went to college in a time when women didn't enter the field of marine sciences. It just wasn't something that they did. And in spite of her excellent academic performances, she was continuously dissuaded because of her gender. And that did not deter her. And if you'd ever met her, you would know why. She received her bachelor's, her master's, and her doctorate degree from the UNC Chapel Hill. And she taught at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington for 21 years. And I was lucky enough to be one of her students. She might be one of the most interesting people I have ever had the pleasure of meeting. And I will never forget the impact that she had on me as a student at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. So I want to try to march through my journey through DMF with you through these slides. And I will be highlighting the women pioneers in fishery science at DMF that influenced my career. So it wasn't until my first job with the Division of Marine Fisheries that I began to realize the difference in what I thought being a marine biologist might be like being like Jacques, versus what working with the Division of Marine Fisheries really would be like. So I started in 1990 as a fisheries technician on the river heron project. And wow, it was a dream come true. I mean, there were no submarines, but I was in the field and on a boat more than I was in the office. And it was just heaven for me. It was awesome. And then in 1999, after my stint away from the division, I came back and I was hired as a technician on the striped bass monitoring project, which required fishing on an independent gill net survey. I was one of the first females to do that. And again, I didn't even really think about it at the time, to be quite honest, and it didn't faze me. And it really didn't seem to faze the guys that I worked with. We worked together on a gill net boat, and they may have talked about it when I wasn't around, but it didn't seem to bother them. And we all loved our jobs, but when we were done working together on the gill net boat for the day, we would rush home to our private boats, and we would get on private boats, each other's private boats, and we would go fishing in the afternoons. That's what we would do for fun. And it was a common thing that we saw. It is what drew us, a lot of us, to this field of marine sciences. And we shared that in our spare time as well. And I think it made us a better team. And becoming biologist on the river heron monitoring program around 2000, you kind of start seeing your career go in a different way. You trade a little bit of your field work for data analysis and report writing and things like that. And then when I became a biologist supervisor in 2003, you basically kind of trade all of your field work, which is what brought you to the field in the first place, or for me anyway. But you traded the field work for program and staff supervision and resource management. And during this entire period from 90 to 2011, I had one supervisor, and she was the one person who has had the biggest impact on my career. And Sarah Winslow is in the audience today with us. And Sarah, thank you for coming. I appreciate your support throughout my ride here at the division and your continued support. Sarah started with the division in 1979 as a fisheries technician, and she retired as a Northern District manager in 2011. And I brought my work ethic with me, courtesy of my parents, to the Division of Marine Fisheries. But Sarah took it from there, and she really showed me the ropes. And most importantly, she mentored me, she educated me, and bestly, she cheered me on every step of the way, and she wanted me to succeed, even after her retirement. And thank goodness she's still willing to take phone calls and answer text messages when I panic over something that I need an answer to. Her career path was very similar to mine, I think, and very similar to Dr. McCreary's career path. And her father was a game warden at one time, and he was an avid fisherman and an avid hunter. And her life and her raising on the Paquimans River, we had so much in common as to how we got to the Division of Marine Fisheries and also how we progressed once we arrived. And I remember Sarah saying, you need to always know why you were doing something, not just what you were doing. And that has stuck with me throughout my career. She was my mentor, and she helped me along the way to understanding why sustainable fisheries are important and why we need to protect the resources of this state. She understood and believed in the mission at the Division of Marine Fisheries, and we'll talk about that a little later. And she passed on that knowledge to me and other staff people as well. And I'm very grateful for that. It was when I started to work at the Division of Marine Fisheries with Sarah that I realized I wouldn't be exploring the ocean floor by submarine or traversing the world's oceans. And although I would never be famous like Jacques, what I would be doing would be equally as important. And I believe that to this day. And Sarah continues to serve the state in looking after our fisheries resources. She serves as chair of the Northern Advisory Committee, and she also represents the division and the state on the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council for federal management of species. She was a wonderful mentor and friend, and I'm forever grateful for her guidance over the years and still today. So this is kind of the part of my journey where I call the after Sarah era. And it was difficult in the beginning, but luckily for me, when Sarah first retired in the winter of 2011, she made frequent visits and phone calls. We went to lunch quite a bit. And that was awesome because I could then, well, while we're at lunch, how about this and that, just to kind of get a few extra tips. But as the spring came on and it was time to plant the garden, we saw less and less of Sarah in the office. So she was at home planting the garden, and I'm glad she was. But I had worked with Sarah for the better part of 15 years, and this was really where my career seemed to take a turn into the management realm. And upon Sarah's retirement in 2011, I replaced her as the Northern District Manager, and I worked in the office in Elizabeth City. And in 2014, I moved to Morehead City and became the Fisheries Management Section Chief. And it was as if a well-laid plan, another inspiration, a strong pioneer fisheries woman whom I had worked with over the years, but not very closely, became the next person that helped shape me as a biologist and helped shape my career. And that was Katie West. And Katie started with the division in 1978 as the statistics coordinator, and she retired in 2021 as the Northern District Manager with 43 years of service. And I'm not even sure it's not a little bit more than that. So Katie actually was more statistics driven than biology and fishing, but she assisted and really pretty much did create the commercial and recreational statistics program and a biological database that we still use in some form or fashion today that houses millions of our data records. And although I was Katie's boss beginning in 2014, the fact that when she started to work at the Division of Marine Fisheries, I was 11, was never lost on me. Or her, because I mentioned it quite frequently, and we both enjoyed the comments that would follow that conversation. And it is one we had quite a few times. Her division knowledge, the institutional knowledge of statistics and fisheries was very extensive. And if you were lucky enough to get some time with her to sit down to go over things and discuss things, you were lucky. And staff still relies on her today for various questions and things about historical perspectives. She was a great friend and mentor, and we did a lot of great work together. And I appreciate all the guidance that she gave me throughout the years. And so the final leg, which I hope is the final leg, officially began for me May 1st of 2021 when I became the director of the Division of Marine Fisheries. And what do you know? Another barrier-breaking woman herself as the first female deputy director of the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries, a position that she held for nearly 15 years. So Deputy Director Dee Lupton and I have very similar stories, similar to Sarah's story, similar to Dr. McCrary's story. Her family were commercial and recreational fishermen. She enjoyed fishing as a young girl, and she was from Pamlico County, so she recalls looking through trawler catches and seeing the different things that were brought on board, and that inspired her, all the different creatures and the cool things that she collected. She also attended UNCW and received a Bachelor of Science degree in marine biology in 1990. And she started with the Division of Marine Fisheries in July of '94 as a biologist on the newly formed trip ticket program. And this was our program at the time that was used to, and is still used today, to collect commercial landings information from seafood dealers. So Dee became the first female section chief of the License and Statistics section in 1999. And she moved on in 2007 to become the first female deputy director. And she still holds that position today. And I can tell you right now, I would never have accepted the director job if it hadn't have been for Dee. Knowing that she was there gave me a boatload of comfort that I would not have had otherwise. She is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the division, and she could very easily be sitting in this director's seat and do a fantastic job for managing the fisheries of this state. And we all say at work, she runs the place, and she runs the place, and there's no question about it. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the Division of Marine Fisheries and a little of a historical perspective on women at the Division of Marine Fisheries. Not too much longer now, guys. We're probably maybe halfway through. the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries has been around a long time, about 200 years to be exact, and we will begin celebrating our 200th anniversary at the end of this year and through next year. So around December in 1822, the first fisheries law was enacted, and it was on oysters to prevent them from being transported out of state. And it carried a $200 fine, which is a lot of money back in those days. And if you look through these old publications, probably can't see them too well, but there's not a lot of mention about women. And these are DMF publications. The mentions that you do see are of things like the new patrol boat gets champagne, and that was the director's wife. And you see some women clamming. And then you see the middle one, which says the pretty girls like to learn about things too, like to learn about fish too, or whatever it says. So that's a type of things that you saw, if you saw anything about women back in the 60s and early 70s. And then in the 70s, you start to see a little bit of a change at the Division of Marine Fisheries. There was an article in the 1972 about Linda, the name of the article was Linda Help Fisheries Division. And the article was about Linda Nutwell, and she was a 33-year-old mother of two, and she was enrolled as a student in the Cape Fear Technical Institute's Marine Lab Technology program, which was unheard of at the time, I think. And she worked with a male biologist, and the article was very specific that she had to work with the male biologist in order for her to be able to get out into the field and get field experience. In another article, you see a reference to two female lab technicians. And you can still tell that the idea of women in fisheries, fishery science and fields at DMF was a little new and just still hadn't quite taken off yet. And there was an article in 75 about Diane Natalie, and she would be calling random commercial fishermen and with a questionnaire about their fishing activity. And this was really kind of a precursor to today's trip ticket program. And that's kind of where that all started. And she was one that helped start that survey. And then finally, we got around to got some good traction here for women in fishery science. And the November 1976 edition of the Tar Heel Coast had an article with the headline, Cindy. And Cindy was Cynthia Fletcher. And she was at that time the first and only female Division of Marine Fisheries biologist. She began working for the division in 1975 after graduating from NC State with a Bachelor's of Science in Marine Sciences. And the article cracks me up because it describes Cindy as a boat and net girl who catches shrimp and fish and crabs to see how many there are in the area. Her contemporaries remember her as an anadromous fish biologist in the Wilmington area, and she co-authored a report on the North Carolina Anadromous Fisheries Management Program. This is the very program that I began working on as a technician in 1990, and Sarah and I have co-authored this report multiple times. Another early DMF biologist was also Alice Brown, and she worked with the oyster program. So Cindy and Alice basically paved the way for the rest of us and other female biologists who came after them, people like Sarah, people like Katie, and many of the other women scientists who work at the Division of Marine Fisheries today. So I want to shift gears again to go through what today's Division of Marine Fisheries does, the structure of the division, and really what does our work involve. And it's quite this, as I was putting this PowerPoint presentation together, it really kind of hones in. It is quite extensive as what our sections do and what the division does as a whole. A lot of people don't realize that we are one of 11 divisions within the Department of Environmental Quality. So providing for the Department of Environmental Quality, providing science-based environmental stewardship for the health and prosperity of all of North Carolinians is their mission. And what do you know? Another barrier-breaking female. This is the Department of Environmental Quality Secretary Elizabeth Beiser. She was the first woman to head that agency, and she was confirmed in June of 2021. And as a DEQ secretary, she oversees the state agency whose mission it is to protect North Carolina's environment and natural resources. The organization has offices from the mountains to the coast and administers regulatory and public assistance programs aimed at protecting the quality of North Carolina's air, water, and land, its coastal fisheries, and the public's health. And you can see here, Secretary Beiser visited us late last summer, and she's getting a tutorial in our lab, in our aging lab, on flounder identification from Kevin Amen, who works in our aging lab. So this is just to give you a little bit of an idea about what really is scary as a division director managing a budget of this size. And this, we have right around 300 employees, 265-ish, 70 of those are full-time and 38 are temporary. And our budget is around $33.5 million. That might be a little bit more, a little bit less. This is last year's budget, but our operations is around $12 million. And we are a rather large agency. This seems like a large budget, but it has dwindled probably over 50% in the last 15 years. And this is certainly one of the struggles for the Division of Marine Fisheries. And we are East Coast leaders in fisheries data collection. And those positions are hard to hold when you have the cuts that we have experienced over the last 15 or 20 years. So the mission of the Division of Marine Fisheries is the division is dedicated to ensuring sustainable marine and estuarine fisheries and habitats for the benefit and health of the people of North Carolina. This sounds like such a simple thing to do, but it is not simple, but it is worthy. So I want to go quickly through the 7 sections that we have at the Division of Marine Fisheries and just talk about each one of those as we're going along. I can tell you right now, hands down, that the biggest asset that this state has and that the Division of Marine Fisheries has are its employees. I have never worked with a more dedicated, knowledgeable group of people. I am probably actually the most minimally educated biologist on staff at the Division of Marine Fisheries. We have technicians, biologists, stock assessment scientists, statisticians, most with master's degrees or PhDs. And I can promise you, they do it for the love of the job. They do not do it for the money because the pay isn't all that great. So there are 4 scientists on this slide that work in the director's office. Some of the staff calls it the carpeted end of the hall. But if you notice something about this slide, poor Chris. Chris is the only guy at the carpeted end of the hall. So along with me, there are 4 other scientists. And again, we talked about Dee Lupton earlier. She's the deputy director. She is responsible for the day-to-day operations and keeping me from saying things that I shouldn't say. And Laura Kablansky is the division's liaison with the Marine Fisheries Commission, which is the policymaking board for the state and for the state's fisheries. Trish Murphy is the division's representative on the South Atlantic Fishery Management Council, which is one of 2 federal fisheries boards on which North Carolina holds a seat. And the 4th biologist is Chris Fatsavage, and he is the division's representative on the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council, as well as the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, which really coordinates management of migratory species in state waters between the East Coast states. So fisheries management is a section I'll start with, and that's the whole section I worked in for 25 years of my career until I became the director. And I certainly know more about the work that this section does than I do others, but as the director, I'm slowly starting to learn of the other sections and of the great work the division really does as a whole. Steve Poland heads up the fisheries management section. He took my place and when I moved on to director. So the fisheries management section is responsible for fishery management plans. In 1997, a piece of legislation known as the Fisheries Reform Act was passed, and it requires that the state develop fishery management plans for all commercially and recreationally important species. And these fishery management plans are really the cornerstone for management in our state for our fisheries. The stock assessments, they are also responsible for those. And this is really a process where our scientists take biological and statistical information and analyze it to determine the health of the stocks. And these fishery management plans are built around these stock assessments. And guess what? Our chief stock assessment scientist is also a woman. In fact, we have 3 stock assessment scientists on board. They're all women. We also, the Fisheries Management Section is also responsible for the At-Sea Observer Program, also run by a woman. Barbie Bird is a biologist on that program, and she has over 20 years experience in protected resources management. And this program collects interaction data from the anchored gillnet fisheries that go on in this state to monitor endangered sea turtle and Atlantic sturgeon takes, as well as discard information from that fishery. So also as part of the program is a tagging program. This is one of the coolest programs I think we have at the division, certainly in the section. And guess what? It's managed by a woman. Amy Staples is a biologist, 2 with the Division of Marine Fisheries, and she runs our tagging program. And the division researchers are basically studying the migration, the growth and habitat use and population status of striped bass, red drum, spotted sea trout, southern flounder, and cobia in North Carolina. Right now, they're the fish that we actively have in our program. And to report a tag, you can do it online, or you can call the Division of Marine Fisheries and they can take your information. Reported tag returns are a very important part of the program. We need those returns, and they will score you money or a hat, a towel, pin, or some other item that we are giving as rewards. And you will also be entered in one of 3 annual $100 drawings. And you get a really cool certificate of recognition from the division, and it tells you where the fish was tagged, when the fish was recaptured, how large it was, how far it's traveled, how many days it's been at large. A lot of really cool information comes on that certificate and goes into this program. I've been fishing a long time, and maybe it's my catch rate that's the problem here, but I really have never caught a tag fish, and I'd really do want to. Another really great program that we have is our carcass collection program. It is a statewide effort funded by proceeds from the sales of our North Carolina coastal recreational fishing licenses. And yep, you guessed it, that program is run by a woman. Casey Knight runs our carcass collection program. Carcasses are donated by recreational fishermen, and they are a critical source of data for the Division of Marine Fisheries. And the division has select places that they put freezers, and they are designated sites that recreational fishermen can come and put their filleted carcasses. And from the fish that are donated to the program, the biologists can collect length and age and sex data that they can use in stock assessments, which help to inform management of our fisheries resources and lead to better management. And just a real quick comment about age structures, because this was always so fascinating to me. One of the things that we get from these carcasses are ages, and depending on the species, you're either going to get a otolith, which is basically a fish ear bone, or you're going to get a scale, and you basically read them the same way, counting the rings as to determine the age. And it's very similar to counting the rings on a tree to determine how old it is. It is a really, really cool program. So we also, the Fisheries Management Section is also responsible for the North Carolina Saltwater Fishing Tournament, otherwise known as a citation program. And in this particular instance, citation is a good thing. And this has been one of the most exciting things that I've been able to do so far as director. And this is issue a saltwater fishing citation to my nephew for a release of his outstanding red drum catch that he had last summer. It was fun to watch, but it was even more fun to sign, and I really enjoyed that, and he cherishes it as well. Of course, my father did not cherish the time that we spent following that 40-plus-inch red drum around, as my nephew had it hooked on a little beetle spin and a brim rod, but we got it, and he got his citation, so that was really cool. So moving on to the license and statistics section, you guessed it, a woman section chief and an avid fisherman as well. Brandy Salmon heads up our license and statistics section, and they are responsible for our commercial and recreational fisheries data collection. They are responsible for license and permitting issuance, as well as our socioeconomic program and extensive data analysis. Any public data request comes and goes to them, they fill those out. Anglers in North Carolina catch more saltwater fish than any other state, except Florida. So how do we know that? We know that because of the surveys in the coastal angling program. The goal of the CAP, as it's known, is to improve the quality and quantity of recreational fisheries data, and the information gathered through CAP is essential to the development of our state's fishery management plans. The division has collected information on recreational fishing, catch and effort data since 1981, and we are recognized as one of the nation's leaders in this area. And North Carolina can have well over 1 million, 1.5 million anglers participating in our fisheries at any given time. There's a lot of fishing going on in this state, a lot of recreational fishing going on in the state. The section is also responsible for our trip ticket program. So from 1978 to 1993, North Carolina's commercial fisheries landings were basically collected on a voluntary basis, working with the National Marine Fisheries Service. And the growing need for more detailed information on commercial landings prompted the General Assembly to mandate trip level reporting back in 1994. And so that was when the trip ticket program was developed. Since that time, the division has grown into one of the leading fisheries data collection programs in the country. And in fact, many other states model their trip ticket program by the one in North Carolina. So just to give you an idea, in 2021, we had about 6,400 commercial licenses issued, with about 2,600 being active. And really those license sales and activities have continued on a downward trend over the last 10 years. So moving on to habitat and enhancement, this is the first guy we've seen in a while. This is Jacob Boyd, and he heads the section. I used to work with Jacob when he was a technician in Elizabeth City on the striped bass monitoring project. This section focuses on the protection and enhancement of fisheries habitat. It also houses the staff who work on the North Carolina's Coastal Habitat Protection Plan, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. There's a lot of really good stuff going on in this section as well. Shellfish mapping and leasing, the artificial reef program. We have an oyster rehabilitation and sanctuary program, and again, the Coastal Habitat Protection program. The North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries administers the shellfish lease and franchise program for the purpose of shellfish cultivation, aquaculture, and mariculture within the state. And the state has allowed shellfish leases on unproductive bottoms since 1858. That goes back a long way. Currently, we have about 423 leases in the state, covering about 1,800 acres, and we get anywhere from 30 to 50 lease applications per year. Very interesting program. The artificial reef program creates and monitors artificial reefs in North Carolina. These reefs attract fish and shellfish and can be made from natural or man-made materials, and they're good for fishing and diving. And often fish will begin to colonize on these reefs just hours after they're put in the water. These reefs are considered crucial spawning and foraging habitat for many commercially and recreationally important fish species. And we at the division, we manage this section. We manage about 43 ocean artificial reefs and 25 estuarine reefs, and 14 of those estuarine reefs are oyster sanctuaries. And the division has developed an interactive map of the different artificial reefs and the locations, as well as a paper artificial reef guide. And these are great tools if you want to check out some of North Carolina's greatest fishing spots. The Oyster Sanctuary Program is also run in the Habitat Enhancement section. North Carolina really has one of the most active shellfish restoration efforts in the country. One of the largest programs is this effort in the Oyster Sanctuary Program, and these oyster sanctuary areas are where the harvest of oysters is prohibited, and these areas are protected to encourage growth of large, healthy oysters that can act as a brood stock for the rest of North Carolina's coastal waters. In these areas, the Division of Marine Fisheries deploys materials to build reefs and encourage baby oysters to settle and grow. And I mentioned the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan. It is fondly referred to as the CHIP. It's a whole lot easier to say than the rest of that. But with over 2.9 million acres of estuarine and coastal waters and 12,000 miles of shoreline, North Carolina's diverse coastal habitats provide the foundation for a healthy and sustainable seafood industry, a sound coastal economy, and resilient coastal communities. And these are quotes taken directly from the CHIP. The overarching goal of the CHIP is long-term enhancement of coastal fisheries through habitat protection and enhancement efforts. Development and implementation of the CHIP is a North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality effort, and DEQ is now working on implementation of the CHIP as it was recently adopted in January of this year. Moving on to our shellfish sanitation and recreational water quality, Shannon Jenkins is the section chief. And Shannon and I used to be neighbors when we were really, really little kids. And I think it's really cool that we have come back together to work together as adults. Another one of our women in science leadership is Erin Bryan Malush, and she heads our recreational water quality program. So shellfish sanitation is responsible for classifying coastal waters as to their suitability for shellfish harvesting, as well as certification of shellfish and crustacea processing plants, as well as monitoring and issuing advisories for coastal recreational swimming areas. This is just a slide of one of the plants that they inspect on a regular basis. And here's just some pictures of them doing some water quality sampling in the field and then taking it to the lab and finishing up their work on that. So moving along to North Carolina Marine Patrol, it's led by Colonel Carter Witten, and it is the oldest state law enforcement agency. And this is one of the funnest sections for me because I really like the whole Marine Patrol thing. And they gave me a radio when I first started, and I even have a number that I could call on the radio that's my number. I haven't tried that yet because I don't want to scare everybody, but I really do enjoy listening to my radio in the mornings and listening to the activities of our Marine Patrol. The Marine Patrol enforces marine fisheries regulations in all coastal waters in North Carolina, extending out to 3 miles, and in some waters, in extension of that for regulations for federally managed species. While fisheries enforcement is the primary role of our Marine Patrol, they also are called upon from time to time to assist with emergencies, search and rescue, and other emergency situations. Officers, we have maybe, I don't know, 50 some officers, and they monitor 2.5 million acres of water and over 4,000 miles of coastline. That's a lot for 50 some men and women. So they are responsible for compliance and monitoring of fisheries regulations by land, water, and air. And we do have a plane that we, and also have a Marine Patrol pilot. Protection of habitat fisheries and public inspections, and assisting with the observer program for compliance with our incidental take permits relative to endangered species. Also emergency management response and education. So we have 3 female Marine Patrol officers with the Division of Marine Fisheries. The one on the furthest left is Michelle Turner, and she has been employed with us since 2004 and is stationed in Carteret County. And Candace Rose is over here closer to me, and she has been employed since 2019, and she is stationed in the Washington area of Beaufort County. And Officer Ashley Buck in the middle has been employed since 21, and she is stationed in the Belhaven area of Beaufort County. These ladies do a great job at the division, and as Marine Patrol officers, we are very proud to have them, and we thank them for their service as we do all of our Marine Patrol officers. They also have a dedicated education team that travels the state to talk about DMF and about Marine Patrol and about the regulations of the state. They are definitely our most visible day-to-day section, and education is really a huge part of what they do. In fact, they would, if you could ask them, they would probably say they do more education than anything else. And so lastly, our administrative services section, yep, the leader is a woman, and her name is Beth Gavoni, and she is in charge of the purse strings at the Division of Marine Fisheries, and thank the Lord, because I'm glad it's not me. So that she does more than that, but she does manage the division's budget. She is responsible for fiscal accounting, purchasing and contract handling our grants fundings, our coastal recreational fishing license fundings, which go to fund projects that fill data gaps that the division has identified, commercial fishing resource funds. They handle those and help with those as well. They do facility maintenance and repairs, as well as vessel maintenance and repairs. So they really do keep the place running. So I want to conclude this talk by showing you some of the photos of Division of Marine Fisheries employees that the Department of Environmental Quality ran on social media back in February to celebrate Women and Girls in Science Day. And clearly the Division of Marine Fisheries has come a long way since Cindy got it all started for us. And I would like to end by quoting one of my favorite mail items. I want to quote Jacques when I say, "The sea, once it casts its spell, holds one in its net of wonder forever." And that is the end of my presentation, and I thank you all for coming, and I would be glad to take any questions if we've got time for that, if anybody has any. I appreciate the support, and I thank you for coming out. Yes, sir.
How many flounders can you person if they were gigging flounders or catching flounders?
Well,
Are there size too?
there are, and the size limit is 15 inches. And right now you can keep 4 fish, but we have not yet. This season will be different, but we have not yet. The Marine Fisheries Commission will be passing a final vote on the flounder amendment at their next meeting in May. And at that time, we should know better about what the regulations will be. Yes, sir. There's always one in every bunch. Yes, ma'am.
Flounder regulations to increase as far as the amount recreational and commercial, and the next recommendation.
I think the recommendation based on the votes that they made at the last meeting will decrease, and we will be looking hopefully at a TAL to manage these fisheries. I do think the positive thing that we are seeing, and staff has said this from the beginning, that we hoped based on the biology of the flounder that we would see some quick positive stock responses. And I think we are seeing that, even if anecdotally, we're also seeing in our data. So we hope that we are headed in the right direction. We are definitely going to have to tighten our belts for a couple of years and see where that ends up. But I have made the update of the stock assessment a priority for the division, and we will be working with our states to the south who helped us with the first stock assessment, which was a Southern Coast assessment, and we'll be working to update assessment in the next several years. Yes, sir.
I know you're familiar with the herring population, Albemarle Sound. You see that it will be increased or decreased?
So I think when we first put the moratorium on river herring back in 2007, I think we said maybe a 24-year recovery, and I think we're past that. We have seen from time to time in our data, but we have seen positive juvenile abundance survey results in 1 year, but they didn't necessarily transpose into adults in 3 years down the road. So we've seen some blips and some glimpses of improvement, but we are nowhere near the improvement that we would need to see in order to look at this fishery again in any type of recovered lens. And I don't know what to say about will it ever happen. One of the things that is really impacting today's fisheries, all of today's fisheries, are the continuous pulls from other things other than just commercial and recreational fisheries removals, habitat, water quality, climate change. Those things are very important, and they affect the structure of the stocks that we see in our state, and they have a big influence, and they continue to have that. So it is concerning for that fishery as well as others, and also predation. We have a huge increase in blue catfish populations in the western part of Albemarle Sound, and that is a concern for species that they feed on. And certainly river herring would potentially be one of those. Can you do something with him?
Kathy, I know we think about the past so much. What is the future? Fisheries.
That's a great question, and we talk about it a lot internally. And some of the things that when we look back at historical documents, the things that we were discussing in 1964, we're still talking about in 2022. So I think the future of our fisheries is promising, and I really do believe that. And I think with proper management, this state in the estuaries that we have in this state, we are prime location for sustainable fisheries. And I think that is the direction that we are heading. We're trying to head. I do think sector allocation is a big thing, and it really is not about the sustainability of the fishery. It's really about who gets what. We are seeing some commercial fisheries in our state dwindle, and we are seeing recreational fisheries explode. And recreational monitoring, in-season monitoring, is a big thing that all of the states on the East Coast are working on. So we do have some hurdles to get over, but we certainly, I think, are headed in the right way. And we have what it takes to have world-class fisheries in our state, both commercial and recreational.
Do you have any other questions? As far as, I know we can see chat up on the screen, but the chats are just complimenting Kathy today on her talk, how very informative the talk was and how much they've enjoyed the talk today. But we would like to thank Kathy for coming out. I thoroughly enjoyed the talk. Sometimes the personal experiences make the topic much more interesting. So thank you to Kathy's family for coming out today. You can tell that she truly loves you and that she got her love for her career from her family. So thank you again to everyone for coming out today. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it. Thank you all.